Hello and welcome to class today. It is March 19th, and today we're going to be talking about church in the world. You might have noticed I'm not here. Well, I am kind of here, but I'm really not here. I'm out today, as you can probably tell, but I didn't want to miss you, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity for us to interact in such a positive way. So I'm coming to you from YouTube. Special effects there. Anyway, get this down in your journal. Take the journal out. Now, there's no music today. The song of the day is A Children's Crusade by Sting, formerly of the Police. You have to, what I want you to do today is just visualize in your mind. Think of it as kind of a cross between country, heavy metal, rap. And it's a song that centers around the ideas of the Children's Crusade. And if you did your homework, you remember this Children's Crusade was one of those ill-fated events in history. When you think about it today, when you were a child, mom and dad probably didn't let you go too far down the street or wanted to know where you were at all times. Well, the Children's Crusade, they just shipped those kids off to the Middle East. In some ways, it'd be kind of nice, just send the kids off and, have them go fight the enemies of God overseas. But unfortunately for these children, the ones that were not enslaved, the majority of the others died at sea, and very few ever made it back home. So you see the term of the day, Romanesque architecture, which we're going to get back to in more detail. But early on in church history, almost all the buildings were based on the Roman style, which made sense because it was from the Roman world. The term of the day is something we're getting into with today's homework. God wills it. A great line, Das Vult, by Pope Urban II, as he called people to action in the First Crusade and kicked off 200 years worth of religious warfare in the Middle East. And the just so fact of the day is the First Crusade was not just one crusade, but a whole series. There were 5 separate armies that headed to the Middle East, one of which was made up entirely of peasants. You imagine a whole bunch of people with their pitchforks and shovels and fertilizer heading off to go fight the enemy. And needless to say, when they ran into a professional army, they didn't do so well. Anyway, and the movie did, well, before we get there, we should probably pause it at this moment. So if you can, pause the video. Pause. Okay, we're good. Now, when we get back to it, the movie of the day is something we like to call, oh, well, hold on, The Kingdom of Heaven. And The Kingdom of Heaven made with Orlando Bloom in it, everyone's favorite actor. Well, at least he was for a while with Lord of the Rings and Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, 3, 7, 14, and 26 is a movie about the Crusades and Europeans going off and to save the city of Jerusalem from what they considered to be the infidel. So, of course, the city of Jerusalem had been a Muslim city for several hundred years. However, at this time, they decided enough was enough, and for various reasons, as you will find out from your homework and others, they set off. Okay, at this point, we'll pause again. We're going to turn in some homework, and then we're going to get back to the notes. So make sure you pick up the note handout in the front of the room. So, pause. Anyway, we're back looking at that note handout. I'm not here, so this should go rather quickly. But just a reminder, in the Middle Ages, the power of the Pope. We remember excommunication, don't we? We remember interdict. There's a nice picture of a gentleman there named Henry IV who wore a hirsute and walked barefoot through the snow, barefoot through the snow, to apologize to the Pope after an interdict had been placed on his lands. And it's just a reminder of who had the real power in this world. Not only was he a spiritual leader, but in some ways he was a physical leader in his control over the popes and control over control over the people of Europe at this time period. But a reminder, excommunication is expulsion from the church, where an interdict was withholding the sacraments from a larger group. Now, there were many, many events, and there's a couple listed here. You can't see all of it behind my head. But every time there was a confrontation between the Pope and the Pope and a king, guess who won? Pope. In these situations, Gregory II won, innocent, won again. Oddly enough, that spiritual power played very well in these battles. Now, this was a time period, about 1100 to 1300, where there was a great religious awakening in Europe. There was new monastic groups, more missionary movements across to convert the last of the holdouts. There was a great devotion to saints and holy sites, and there was more militantism, anti-Semitism, fighting against Islam with the Crusades. All these things were part of this period of time. Now, when we talk about new monastic groups, one group is the Cistercians. I'm going to go through a couple of these, but Cistercians are like vegans in comparison to vegetarians. These guys are strict, and if you remember Benedictine rule of the past, these guys take it to a whole new level. Benedictines here, Cistercians here. And what we mean by this is they were strict. Benedictines were too soft. These guys were hardcore. More prayer, more work, less decoration in their church. These guys were ready to go. There's a picture of some Cistercians in action. Other groups, there's Franciscans. Franciscans were known for their dedication to the poor. St. Francis, you see St. Francis preaching to the birds there as well. There were Dominicans, very militant in terms of conversions, very militant in terms of setting up schools of education, or schools to educate the masses. There's some pictures there of that friar, the mascot for Providence University, you see right here. A little scary for the younger ones. Also a veneration of saints during this period, a worship of saints, relics, and celebration of saint days, the most popular of which was Mary. Here's a list of some of the different saints you may recognize, from Valentine's to Patrick of this weekend, who was known for pinching people if they did not convert to Christianity. Well, not true, but it sounds better. And then the last thing is here, this Great Awakening, besides this worship of saints, besides new monastic movements, there was a push to show your devotion to God. And one way that we show our greatness, whether it's a city today, is in what we build. For instance, like in the monuments we build in our cities, such as the Arch of St. Louis or the Space Needle in Seattle, to the great buildings we built, like the Empire State Building and the Sears Tower, which is 794 floors high, or maybe like 795, somewhere in there, to the stadiums we built, like Cowboy Stadium, which has a 584-foot long HD TV in it, and the baseball stadium there in Miami, a new stadium out there, to our structures that show our political greatness, whether it's the municipal building of downtown New York City to the Capitol building in DC. Well, in the Middle Ages, it was all about the building of churches. Now, originally the church style was known as Romanesque, and this dates back to the first churches that were built. Romanesque churches, like this one in Pisa, were known for their towers. They were known for their rounded Roman-like arches, and you see the arches on both sides of that. They were known for thick walls. The larger the church, the thicker the walls, which makes sense. And because they had thick walls, there's not a lot of external light coming in. So kind of dark, moody inside these churches. There's examples, some bell towers. Yes, the Leaning Tower of Pisa does lean. Not a lot of adornment, very simple looking buildings, so to speak. Here's another very simple looking large structure. Well, in the Middle Ages, though, in this time period of devotion, there was a push towards building churches that glorified not only God, but the communities that built them. As a reminder, kind of like the stadiums today. Look what we've done. Look how great we are. Now, this new style was known as Gothic architecture. And Gothic architecture is about two things: light and height. And it was really popular from about 1150 to 1400, and it was a style that reaches up to the heavens. Now, originally Gothic was an insult. It was a word. It was a put-down word, like something like, "Oh, those Goths, these these medieval raiders." It was something that they would build. But later on, Gothic became a sign of distinction. Now, Gothic architecture is known for its, you can see the height there in the spires or charts. There is the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Well, there's Notre Dame Cathedral. The Hunchback is hiding. He's hard to see. He's like Waldo. You can see the church at Milan. But what are they known for? Well, one, they're known for their height. And they get their height because they have these things called flying buttresses. And these flying buttresses work like crutches. They are external walls built up that prop against and absorb the weight of the building. Uh-oh, we got an extra. Get rid of that, the weight of the building. And they allowed for height, but they also allowed for something else. You can see the stress right here. The physical stress is absorbed by these, and it allows you to build a building that is much, much higher. Example of a few more of these buildings. At Bourges, you see the flying buttresses here. I was going to point out with my finger, but that really wouldn't do you any good. Now also, these are helped with pointed arches. Kind of like wearing monochromatic or one-color clothing that makes you look taller, or fitted clothing, guys. Your clothing's fitted, it makes you actually look taller. It's a appearance. Pointed arches make a building look a little bit taller than it is. So you get height. So you have the vaults of this church reach up to almost 150 feet. But once you have all this height, and once you have thinner walls because you have this outside support, you also have things like stained glass windows. And in these stained glass windows, they tell stories of God. They tell stories from the Bible. They tell stories that are important to the church. And it allows in lots and lots and lots of light. Now, by the way, this here is from the National Cathedral in DC. And if you look at the center right here, that's a moon rock brought back by some astronauts and given to the National Cathedral. This is an overview of the universe. Now, the last thing about Gothic cathedrals that made them really cool was the inclusion of statues and carvings and the ornate decoration. These things are not simple structures. They went all out. If you look at this one here in Amiens, you have these. These are like, three, four, five, six of about 700 statues on that building. Just took a couple weeks to put together. It was no big deal. Imagine this guy when they were saying, you know, we want a few heads around. Like, how many? Well, we want these 77,000 individuals around the door. We want this and that. This stuff took a lot of work. A lot of time went into building these. Not only did they carve a lot of small statues coming out of the buildings, but like here in Notre Dame, they put statues up everywhere. Now, who sees these? Virtually no one. But that's not the point. The point is putting them out there. Here's, you know, you can see the detail and design. You see the lady in the front here and see the stuff on the side. They tell the stories of God. Sometimes they're of apostles, they're of important individuals. All kinds of, you know, all kinds of important stuff. Gargoyles, you may remember those if you ever saw the Hunchback of Notre Dame. This and that. Here's other gargoyles overlooking the city. Some of them were used as drain spouts. And my favorite gargoyle of all is the one on the National Cathedral that looks a little bit like this. And he's, you know, he says things like, Jesus, I am your father. No, actually, he says, Luke, I'm your father. But that's a whole different story. So anyway, this is a little overview of the notes today. I hope you got some ideas. If you have to stop and go back and add a few things, you can catch this YouTube presentation on Blackboard tonight. Yeah, we're going big time here, people. Anyway, after this, you're going to, well, you've already turned in your homework. We're going to watch a little video on Gothic architecture, and then you have a homework assignment today that you have most of the class to work on, so you should probably finish up. And I will catch you on Wednesday. Ooh.